I've still got a few people joining, so we're just gonna wait a little bit longer to get everyone else caught up to speed. But if you just joined us, drop your name and pronouns and where you're calling in from in the chat so we can get a sense of who's here. All right, it looks like we've had a little slowed down in the waiting room a little bit, so I'll get us started. And we'll see those intros keep coming in. But welcome to City Year Denver. We're super excited you were able to take some time to join us in person today, or as close to that as possible. So this is going to be pretty high level. We just want to give you a sense of City Year in general and service, as well as Denver. And then we'll also cover what to expect next. This won't be the last time that you get a chance to join us and learn more. And then we will end with a Q&A. So if there's things you're wondering about, we will definitely have time to cover that. We are, like I mentioned, waiting for a couple other staff members to join us, so hopefully they are able to hop on. But in the meantime, I definitely want to introduce Josh and myself because we'll be leading you through this session. Hopefully you all have heard from me. If you're here, that's a good sign. But my name is Brenna Eaton. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the Denver Service Year Advisor. So I'm here to support you in your journey to prepare for City Year so you feel confident to serve on your first day. I am from the Denver area. I'm from Arvada, which is a suburb northwest of Denver, but I grew up right on the border. So I currently live in Northwest Denver, and I live 5 minutes from where I was born. So this is my home, and where I'm from, I went to CU Boulder, and then I did serve with City Year Boston after that. So I am an alum. I've been a Corps member too, so I am always happy to share more about my experience in Boston. And then I did quite a few other things before I came back to City Year. I taught abroad. I worked with Denver Public Schools. I did some education policy work at the state level. And then I came back to City Year in 2016. So it's been over 5 years now that I've been back, and I've worked for City Year Denver, City Year Dallas, City Year Tulsa. And now I work with 11 sites in the West region, but Denver is where I'm from, and I will pass it over to Josh.
Awesome. I'm Joshua Schald. I'm the Managing Director of Impact. So that means I oversee the team of folks that supports our Corps members directly. I have been at City Year since September, so I'm still pretty new to the team. Before I joined City Year, I was a school leader in Denver Public Schools. I got my start in education as part of Teach for America. I taught first grade and I taught middle school. And after that, I worked on staff at Teach for America for 5 years on the teacher leadership development side. And then I worked for a few years in the San Francisco Bay Area at the Breakthrough Collaborative as their Director of Curriculum and Instruction before I moved to Denver Public Schools. I'm originally from Kansas, so I keep getting a little bit closer to my family, which is really great. And just really looking forward to meeting you all and getting to know you a little bit better over the next couple months.
Sorry, I'm admitting people into the into the meeting, so I got a little sidetracked there. Emily still hasn't gotten a chance to hop on. Her last meeting ran over, but we have another staff member that just joined us. I know you might be getting your audio set up, Morris, but we're ready for you whenever you're ready.
I'm checking. I think it's my mic's on.
Yes, we can hear you.
in my camera because Josh, my camera's up right earlier. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Morris Price, and I proudly serve as the Vice President, Executive Director of City Year Denver, City Year Mile High. Looking forward to getting to know all of you, and thank you for joining us.
And Morris, do you want to share a little bit more about your background and your connection to Denver?
Sure. So I've been at City Year for 5 years. I'm a Denver native, born but not raised. I was a military brat, so we bounced all over the country, a couple places in Europe, and I moved back to finish high school here. I've had 3 careers that I are passionate about. My first was in higher education, and I finished as Dean of Admission at the University of Denver. I worked for 2 foundations, private foundations, an educational foundation and a GLBT Civil Rights Foundation. And then I was the Colorado Chief of Staff for our Congresswoman for Denver, and then came to City Year where all things combined. I had the chance to do public policy, work with young people around education and philanthropy. So this to me is my dream job, and I get to work in an area that I love in the city, as school district that I graduated from. So.
Awesome. Oh, and actually Emily just joined, so she'll be able to introduce herself in a second. Morris, maybe I just missed it, but did you want to tell them where you got your undergrad?
Oh, yes. We should always make that part known. Morris Price, proudly serving as a Colorado State University alumni, CSU Fort Collins. Go Rams. And got my master's at Regis University.
Awesome. Yeah, we have a couple of CSU people, but I didn't see if they got to join yet. So I just wanted to make sure that they got to see that representation. Emily, have you gotten to hop in yet?
I'm here now, Brenna, yes.
Awesome. If you just want to introduce yourself, we're ready for you.
Awesome, thank you so much. Hi everyone, my name is Emily Thiemer. I use she, her, hers, and serve as the Impact Director with City Year Denver. I've been with City Year Denver for about just over 2.5 years now. Previously, I started as an Impact Manager, then transitioned to a Learning and Analytics role, and now have been an Impact Director since last July. My background was in education. I taught down in San Antonio and was also a core member in San Antonio, graduated from Knox College, which is an associated college of the Midwest. Don't know if there are any ACM schools there, but welcome if you are. Thank you, Brenna.
Yeah, we do have a lot of Illinois people. I don't think any Knox, but definitely a lot of Midwest. Awesome. So I will just move us forward, and Josh and I worked on this and are going to lead you through everything. But Emily and Morris, as long as you want to stay on with us and help us answer questions and fill in anything we missed, we definitely want to hear from you as well. First, we just wanted to introduce you to a little bit of City Year culture. If you joined a pre-interview prep session with me, you've already learned about this a little bit, but it might be new for some folks. Our culture in City Year is really an important part of the experience because it helps build a community and a community of support during a time that can sometimes be challenging. Service isn't easy. So one piece of culture that we like to begin and end our days with is joys, ripples, and appreciations. And joys are pretty self-explanatory, something that happened today or recently that brings you joy. An appreciation would be an appreciation for someone else usually, or maybe something. A ripple you don't see as often, a little bit harder to explain, so it's okay if we don't have any of those today. But as an example, if you were in the classroom tutoring a student and you taught them a new approach to a math problem, and then later in the day you saw them teaching it to a peer, another student, that would be a ripple. Something you did was passed forward and rippled outwards. A shout out is just a shout out, and a window, this is a difficult time in general for a lot of us. And like I mentioned before, surface can be hard. So a window is just a window into how you're feeling that day. If you feel like it's something that's important for your team or others around you to know. So I'll just start us off with a big appreciation. I'm excited to have 3 other staff members here with me today and your willingness to take time out of your busy day to come join us. So thanks, Emily, Morris, and Josh. And then we have time for 2 to 3 other joys, appreciations, ripples, anything that anyone's willing to jump in and share. If you're brave.
It's been snowing for weeks here in Indiana, and today it was 50 degrees, and so climate change is a whole thing, but I'm going to appreciate the sunshine, and so I appreciate that I could sit outside today and not freeze, so that was nice.
Olivia, if I could ask, what part of Indiana?
I'm currently in Southern Indiana in Bloomington at Indiana University.
So there's a joy. I worked at Wabash College and DePaul University.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. Yeah, real close.
It was 21 degrees last Tuesday. This Tuesday is 75 or almost 80 here.
And Love, where are you?
Mississippi.
Okay. I could use some of that 70-degree weather. We're getting 5 inches of snow tonight, so we
Yeah,
could use some of that 80-degree love here.
for sure.
Yeah, we got a storm coming in. It was sunny and I had to turn on my lights right before this because it just clouded over. Thank you both for jumping in. Really appreciate that. We're going to have some more space to hear from you all later. But first, I'm just going to take us forward and learn a little bit more about Denver. I know some of you are here, but we want to cover it for everybody in case you're moving to a brand new place. So we want to give you more information about City Year and Denver specifically, and then what you can expect moving through the year as things start to ramp up and we get closer to our start date. First, just a big congratulations. You might already know this, but if you don't, City Year Denver is the most competitive City Year site. So congratulations if you're making it here. We selected you for a reason and we're excited for you to join us. All right, so just a couple quick things about Denver. I picked some things that I think are great, but other staff members or anybody that's from here, I definitely want to hear from you later if there's something that I missed. So Denver is exactly 1 mile high. Something that people that relocate here tell me every single year is that they say they didn't believe us when we said to bring a water bottle and drink lots of water. And they say you will feel it. So we are at a high elevation, and fun fact, one of the steps at the state capitol is exactly a mile high, and that's labeled. So Denver is not in the mountains though. That's something that's also really surprising to people when they get here. Denver is the queen city of the plains. So even though the mountains are right here in our backyard, we're still right on the plains and a little bit flatter than you might have been expecting. Based on those weather joys, we do get over 300 days of sun per year. We are one of the only cities to have 6 professional sports teams, and we collect more for the arts on a per capita basis than any other city, and we have one of the largest city park systems in the country. So that's another cool thing, is that our city, Denver, is like super committed to making the outdoors accessible, even if it's not in the mountains. But anything I missed, or if we do have anybody from here, I know there's a couple of people I saw that joined. If you have a favorite thing about Denver that I didn't call out, I would love to hear it. And if you don't, I'll move on. And I'm going to pass it over to Josh.
Awesome. I love Denver. I lived in San Francisco before this, and I will choose Denver over San Francisco any day. Sorry for any of you that are in the Bay Area. So here in our Corps, we have 71 AmeriCorps members. It's a mix of first-year folks like yourselves, and then we also hired 12 returning AmeriCorps members, some that serve as service leaders. So that would be someone that's leading on your team that you can go to ask questions, that will lead and support spaces for reflection, and work with your impact manager to support you. And also second-year Corps members who take on leadership roles within their schools. We currently serve in 9 schools, 2 elementary schools, 4 middle schools, and 3 high schools. We anticipate this might shift a little bit next year. And we also work with both charter and traditional public schools. Denver Public Schools is unique because charter schools are part of Denver Public Schools, even though they can operate autonomously, which is a little bit different than at least districts that I'd worked in before. That wasn't true. We have a variation too on our team sizes. So some are very small. This year, our smallest was 5, and some are really large, up to 13 members. So the experience of our team really varies, and that's because what our schools need is really different. So DPS really believes in school autonomy and that leaders get to make decisions. And so every single principal makes the decision to bring City Year to their school. And we set up our teams and our supports and our structures to support that individual school and community, which I think is pretty cool and unique. So I can talk a little bit about just Denver Public Schools at a high level demographically. So it's a huge district, over 90,000 students in 207 schools. The district is incredibly diverse in a lot of different ways. Over 60% of kids in DPS qualify for free and reduced lunch, which is our best indicator of families that live below the poverty line. And additionally, over 75% of our students are students of color. Denver is incredibly diverse in the languages spoken. You can see many of them listed here. While over 50% of our students identify as English language learners, and a little over 50% of those students identify as speaking Spanish as their first language. So that what's kind of interesting about Denver is our schools look really different and unique depending on the neighborhood and where the school is located. And Brenda's going to talk a little bit about kind of what our geographical footprint looks like.
Thanks, Josh. And let me scoot the video over so you can see everything. So this is like a really zoomed out view, but I wanted to make sure that I included the airport. That's another thing that people tell me pretty often they're surprised by, is that they land at the airport and they're like, oh my God, where am I? Because I'm not in Denver. So you can see the airport up in the top right corner there isn't really centrally located. So I just wanted to give you some perspective if that's the way that you're going to enter the city. So I'll just start here. If you can see my cursor where the yellow star is, that's where our office is. So we're really centrally located. We're in a neighborhood called Cap Hill or Capitol Hill. So we are very near downtown. And if you see where it says Lodo just above the yellow star, that is where the major train station is. So there is a train now connecting downtown to the airport. This is still a huge deal for me because we didn't have this, so I'm just really excited about it. But if you did fly in and then want to take the train into Denver, that's where you would end up. And our office is pretty easily accessible from there. So in general, we've kind of got 3 distinct regions that our schools are in. And like Josh mentioned, we might change a little bit. We've had some schools request a team, and so we're working through that right now. So if this map changes, we'll definitely let you know right away. But in general, the 3 sort of regions that we work in are the Northwest. Up here, you can see 3 little tokens. And the Southwest, there's actually 3 schools down here in the Southwest, but 2 of them share a campus. And then the East, which is quite a bit more spread out, and you can see 3 different schools here in the East. when Josh talked about our schools earlier, you might have noticed we only have 2 elementary schools. We serve in a lot of middle schools. That's my favorite age. So big pitch for that if you are excited to work with middle schoolers. But Highline out here in the Northeast is one of our biggest teams and one of those 2 elementary schools. So if you're thinking about looking for housing and you're like really committed to elementary school and maybe have a background that makes you a great fit for that, definitely reach out and chat with me and we can talk about like interest in Highline and how that might inform your housing if that's something you're really committed to. Our other elementary school, Johnson, is down here in the Southwest, the other little green token, and that's our smallest team with only 5 core members. So if elementary is something that you're really interested in, housing can be cheaper out east near Highline, and we want to work with you on that if that's of interest to you. But as far as demographics for our schools, these 3 schools up here in the Northwest is Skinner, Lake, and North. So 2 middle schools and a high school. And the majority of our students at these 3 schools are Hispanic. So that's our primary demographic in the Northwest. In the Southwest, we have another like high percentage of Hispanic or Latino students. And we also, you might have seen Vietnamese on that language list. We have a high Asian population down there, and a lot of our students are Vietnamese. So if we ever do have somebody that speaks Vietnamese, we'll also definitely want to connect with you because you would probably be a good fit for the Southwest region. So just a call out if we do have any Vietnamese speakers. And then the 3 schools down there in the Southwest are Johnson Elementary, Compass Academy, which is a middle school, and Lincoln High School. And Compass Academy is on the Lincoln campus, like I mentioned before. So 2 different schools, but in the same building. And then in the East region is a lot more diverse just in general. We have white, Hispanic, and Black students primarily out in the East. So just a more diverse experience, a lot of different languages, much closer to Aurora, which is a really diverse neighborhood as well. Our schools in the East are George Washington, which is this red little token, and then Denver Discovery School, which is a middle school, and Highline, like I mentioned, is in the Northeast. So one other thing that I just wanted to highlight about public transportation here is that we do have a commuter rail. So we have a light rail train that's meant to get you in and out of the city. It doesn't necessarily get you around the city very well. So we do provide a bus pass for core members that need that. And the bus is the main way to get around town. So I just wanted to call out again, if you can see my cursor here, on the west side of the city where all of these schools are for the Northwest and the Southwest, that's Federal Boulevard. So almost all of our schools on the west side are located near or on Federal Boulevard, which is has a lot of bus routes. So that's just something to consider if you're looking for housing, that Federal can be a pretty accessible thoroughfare when it comes to public transportation. So you can always pull up this map. I shared the actual map instead of just this screenshot in the Slack group, and it will be on the website later too. So you can always pull this up and look at different commute patterns and things like that when you're looking at housing. I did want to talk about school placement here as well while we're talking about our schools. I've talked to some folks about it, so I'm sorry if this is like repetition for you, but I want everyone to have access to it. We do wait to place you on your school team until you've arrived. And we think it's really important to get to see people in action, get to know you, and see how everyone interacts together before we do place you on teams. So we want to create diverse and balanced teams, but that doesn't mean that you don't have a voice in that process. So when you're looking for housing, you can definitely think about looking in one of these regions so that you're close to like a group of schools. And then we will give you more information about all of the schools, and you'll be able to fill out a survey and tell us more about your background, your preferences, and also where you're living so that we can take your housing situation into account. So even though that can feel a little bit overwhelming, that's something that we know is really important to the core member experience. And so we will take all of that information into account when we make school placements. So it's a very intentional process. And I'm going to keep us moving along, but if you have more questions about that later, we can definitely talk about it. Okay, so I made a Slido. If you haven't used Slido before, it's kind of like a polling system, but full disclosure, I've never used it before as a facilitator. Like I've used it a lot as a participant. So you're just gonna have to bear with me and hope that this works, but we wanna hear from you. So you can Google Slido. You can use your computer or your phone. And you can also scan this QR code if you want and just pull this up, and then you're gonna put in that code. I picked 5280 for Mile High. And so if there's any questions in the chat, hopefully Josh or Emily can help me out with that. And I'm gonna try opening the first poll. Awesome. So hopefully you should be able, when you have this pulled up, to put in what you are excited about. Okay, this is great, it's working. Love seeing the new community part. I tell people a lot, but I relocated to serve. I think Emily can back me up on this since she did too, but I tell people that doing City Year is one of the easiest ways to move across the country because you already have a built-in community of people that are close in age, but also have similar values and motivations. And so it makes it really easy to connect with other people. Check the chat and make sure. Oh, perfect. Thank you, Josh, for putting that in there. Oh, I didn't even know I had a Q&A, so I'm learning. Thanks, folks. We'll definitely cover that one at the end. Let me see if I can start the next poll. Okay. Hopefully this poll is active too, so you should be able to do the same thing. Yep, super. Purposeful work, love that. Working with a team. This is another thing I tell people a lot, so you might have heard it from me, but coming into City Year, you know that you'll be working with students, so that's not a huge surprise that you'll build meaningful relationships there, but I had no idea how important the team aspect would be, and I'm still friends with my team. I served 10 years ago, but I've gone to a bunch of their weddings, and even last week, one of my teammates is on a cross-country road trip to see family, and she stopped by, and we got to hang out outside, which is awesome, but those relationships are lifelong. Awesome, thanks. Okay, and then we have one more. Cool, so it is anonymous, so It's okay to be honest. And some of these are things we're going to touch on shortly too, so don't worry. COVID is one of those. Diversity is another one. As well as training. We'll talk about training too. So thanks for being open and transparent. Awesome. So I will leave this open for now. If people want to drop things in, it'll help us continue to remember what other information you are looking for, but we wanted to stop in the middle and hear from you. So thank you. And like I just mentioned, actually, we are going to talk about COVID. So I'm going to pass it over to Josh for that.
So Josh lost. Oh, just kidding. Are you good, Josh?
Can you hear me? Okay?
I think I heard you, if that's what you asked. If you want to take this one, oops, Emily, and then, oh.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and speak to this. Josh is having some technical difficulties, which quite an appropriate time to be doing that because we have been virtual due to COVID. At this point in the school year, people have transitioned back to in-person learning. So we as an organization continue to work with our district partner to ensure core member safety, student safety, things like that, as well as follow the CDC guidelines to ensure that everyone is remaining safe as we transition back to in-person. Our core members were really lucky because they had administration that advocated for them to be included in their school's vaccination plan. So our core members are in the process of getting vaccinated if they have not already begun already. But essentially service in the time of COVID looks different than it would during a typical school year. And what accompanies that is a lot of needing to be adaptable and flexible as things change throughout the year. Any core member this year could tell you how many times they've had to kind of recorrect or pivot in their service experiences just due to things changing as a result of the constantly changing trajectory of the pandemic. So we can't speak specifically about what school may look like next year as the district is not that far along in their planning, but we continue to communicate that to our core members as best we can in a timely fashion once we get the information. So the best thing advice we can give to you in this time is to remain flexible, ask questions when you have them, speak up if you feel unsafe in the environment you're in, and we will work to support you through that process and make sure that everyone's safety is the #1 priority.
Yeah, as a city or service right now, if you are working with your school, we've transitioned to in-person service, but our office is still closed. You can sign up to work there individually, but we are not having events or training days there. So we've kept our training days virtual for right now because we do have 71 core members, and having everyone in the same place would not be in everyone's best interest. So we've kept those virtual. Since we are in person right now, we will potentially be in person next year, but as an organization, we just align ourselves with the district, in this case, Denver Public Schools. So we will follow the guidance of Denver Public Schools and what they choose to do as we begin school.
Brenna, can you hear me?
Yeah, it sounds
Okay,
better now.
I'm sorry. One thing I wanted to add too is that, this has been a challenging year, and Denver Public Schools has, made a lot of really challenging decisions. But I do think one thing that's cool about Denver Public Schools is they have prioritized equity as a part of their COVID response. So for example, in the vaccine rollout, the percent of students who receive free and reduced lunch at your school put you at the front of the line for those educators to receive the vaccine. So that's why our core members have received the vaccine before most other educators in the district, because we work at schools that have a high percentage of free and reduced lunch. So we do really trust the district and their decisions. And, it's cool too that we think the district is very reform and equity minded. And we've seen that in their COVID response as well.
Thanks for adding that. I'm glad to have you back. Awesome. So like I mentioned before, this is meant to be a high-level welcome, a space for you to get some face time with us and ask more questions, but this is by no means the last time that we will do anything. This is really just the kickoff to everything else that we have planned. So right now we're working on just getting everyone prepared for service, and we'll be in that space for a while now. Obviously not everyone needs to relocate, but we know that's a critical part of the experience for many of you. So there will be resources and help about that. So I currently have 2 panels planned with currently serving core members. So you'll have some space. Admitting one more person. I'm glad people are still joining. That's awesome. So we'll have 2 live panels with currently serving core members where you'll get a chance to talk to them, learn more about their experience, especially later in the year. They've been serving virtually for a while and just started in-person service. So once they have gotten some time to acclimate, they'll be able to speak to both of those experiences. So you will have more time with them. They're also in the Slack group, and they've been asking me, like, no one's asking questions. So they're excited to support you. If you have questions for them, definitely reach out to your buddies in the Slack channel, and they're happy to tell you more about their experience. They also run the school Instagram accounts. So if you can go follow some of those, I think they'd be really excited for that too. And you can also follow my Instagram at Brenna_CY, because I share a lot of those. So it's an easy way to find those school accounts. But definitely do connect with core members in the Slack group. In addition to those panels in person, we're going to have some recorded videos that the core members are making about their experience. And so they'll be able to share those as well. And you can watch those and learn more about their experience. And then we will have a registration session as well. Registration happens a week before our start date, and it is required by AmeriCorps that you be in person. So you will need to be here a week before the start date. And I'm actually going to move us forward. Perfect. So we'll have a session in the summer about registration and what you need to do to prepare for that. And then at registration, if you take one thing away from coming to this space today, this is the one thing that I want you to remember. You must bring these important documents to registration because they are AmeriCorps requirements. So there are some other options, and you'll have a website with all of the different options, but the most common ones that folks choose to bring is you must have your social security card, passport or birth certificate, and a government issued photo ID. If you elect to bring a passport, that also counts as your government issued photo ID, but you need those 3 things. And if you come to registration without those 3 things, unfortunately, because of AmeriCorps guidelines, you cannot serve. So it's best to look for these in advance and find them now. Call family members if you have to, because it takes months to get them replaced. And so it happens every year. I have one person that doesn't look for them until the night before registration, and unfortunately they cannot serve with us because these are required. So just remember that, go look for these tonight and figure out where they are, so that you have them ready to go for registration. Great. And I put this in the frequently asked questions page that I emailed and put in the Slack group, but our start date will be determined sometime soon, usually around April. We have to work out some things with the Denver Public Schools calendar to be confident in that start date before we share it, but we generally start the third Monday in July. So we will likely start either July 19th or 26th, and then you'll need to be in person for registration the week before that. So you can read a little bit more in the FAQ sheet that I shared, but if that gives you a good idea, we'll be communicating that in the next month or two. And we did mention this earlier as well. City Year is committed to being an anti-racist organization, and that is something that has been a big focus for our organization over the last few years. So these are just a few of the commitments that our organization has made to equity, knowing that it's critical to the work we do in schools and the systems that we work in. There is an Office of Equity at City Year, and those folks are in charge of creating and distributing learning and development and training for all core members and all staff members. So that is something that you will be trained on, and something that also staff is trained on across the entire organization. They also do an audit and assessment of our culture and work to dismantle inequitable systems throughout our organization. We also have an Equity Council, and the Office of Equity actually came out of a recommendation from the Equity Council. So the Equity Council is made up of members from every single City Year site, as well as the headquarters department, and they work to identify issues and challenges, find solutions, and manage up to the Office of Equity so that we can move forward in this work and be proactive. And then I mentioned DBIE. You'll have learning and trainings. Oh, here we go. All right. So City Year is committed to DBIE, or Diversity, Belonging, Inclusion, and Equity. And if we are looking at a party analogy, you see diversity here is representation, and so that would mean that you are invited to the party. Belonging is the ongoing culture that we're committed to, and that would mean that you feel comfortable and safe coming to and attending the party. Inclusion is that you would be invited to help plan the party. And so that is about dismantling systems that are inequitable and creating space not only for there to be voice at the table, but that voice is listened to. And then equity requires changing structures of power, like you see here. And these are ordered in this way because each one leads to the end goal of equity. So know that we will have ongoing trainings and learning sessions for DBIE. And something else that I meant to mention on the last slide, but I will here, we have both national and local affinity groups. So the local affinity groups that we offer, we have a Pride group, we have a BIPOC, Black and Indigenous People of Color group, and then we also have a White Anti-Racist Learning and Inquiry series. So those are groups or learning series that you can attend throughout the year to connect with other people that identify in a similar way as you. And I'm going to pass it over to Josh for service expectations.
Awesome. So as a part of service, there's really three groups that you are integral to, work within, and are accountable to. So the first is your school community. So this is the school leaders, partner teachers, the staff that works there. Those are all folks that you work with and alongside to meet the goals of the community. So this looks like doing big events and incentives for the school. So our core members do things like run school-wide attendance events. They help to manage and execute things like Black History Month at their school, CY Heroes events, teacher appreciation events. So lots of things that have to do with the entire school community. The second group is, of course, kids, and I was super excited to see that that's what most of you are really excited about. Working with kids who really need that additional support in order to be successful, and giving them the one-on-one and small group tools that they need in order to achieve their goals. And then finally is your team. So you'll be a part of a small team of core members from across the country, and an impact manager who is a full-time city or staff member who works within your school community to lead your team toward their goals and initiatives. So really, as part of service, you get to work with all of these groups. And I think it's just so important that, Brenna touched on our commitment to equity, because regardless of your background or experience, you're going to be working with people who are really different from you. Maybe it comes from one of these categories, or maybe it comes from all of them, where folks, where you're leading and learning across lines of difference, and where that equity work is so important to make sure that you can fully achieve the work that you came here to achieve. Just finally want to touch on a sample of what a day in the life looks like. This is clearly not exhaustive and looks different every single day. I don't know of a core member or staff member that holds the same agenda every single day, because needs come up. But I'll give you just a second to read over this so you can sort of give an idea of some of the things that you might be doing in a typical day of service.
So most folks start around 7 to 7:30, and then you'll end your day anywhere from 4:30 to 5:30, give or take.
So as you can see, a lot of your day is working with others, folks in your community, with kids, with your team, collaborating to put on events and services for kids. As Brennan mentioned, the hours have looked really different this year because of COVID and the requirements to work at home. And we don't know what that's going to look like next year. Typically, our core members are required to work to serve for 1,700 hours a year for an AmeriCorps award, and we anticipate that's what it's going to be like again. But we may be afforded different hours or different flexibility given whatever our circumstances for the coming year.
And then another question we get pretty regularly about your schedule and which students you'll be working with. Once you have your school placement, then you'll work with your impact manager, and you can elevate your voice and advocate for where you want to be. You'll get to meet some of the teachers in the school, make sure that you're paired with a good fit for your partner teacher. But you will get your grade level placement once you've gotten your school placement, and your impact manager will work with you and your teammates to get you set up in a classroom that is the right fit for you. And just for the sake of time, I can stay a little bit longer if we need to, but I would love to see faces here. So we do have time for Q&A, so we're happy to answer any questions that you have. And you can also drop them into the Slido if you feel comfortable with that, now that I know that's working, and I can keep an eye on that as well. And the first FIDO question is, what's the best way? Oh, great. Thank you, Josh. What's the best way to find roommates? And number one, join the Slack group. You don't have to live with City Year core members, though. Most of the folks that choose to live with other people have said they've found a lot of success on Facebook groups. So I can drop all of those Facebook groups in the Slack group. They should be on the new website, but there's with groups like Denver Area Creative Housing and Denver Housing and Subletting, and you can find roommates in there as well as housing. As far as joining the Slack group, I actually had a roommate quiz survey already, and Nate used some of that to create his survey. But Nate, who will be serving, I don't know if I saw Nate join. I don't think he's here. But Nate made a roommate survey, so you can fill that out and get a feel for other people that'll be serving and get to know them and find roommates that way.
I have a quick question about relocating.
Mhm.
For if you have to fly in, how would you like get like your stuff if it's not like just like being able to be packing into like a suitcase, like boxes? Would you have to work that out with like the apartment that you're signing a lease to, or could we send it to like your offices and then pick it up and bring it to the place that we're staying in? Like, how does that work?
If you wanted to ship stuff to our office, you could definitely email me and let me know. I'd say like general boxes we could probably keep for like a day or two. If it was something like a bed or a mattress, I don't think we could handle that, but a couple of boxes would be okay. A lot of people have done like those little pods or whatever. I think they're, Emily's nodding, so I don't know if I had the right word. Those pods, or they choose to drive out. But I had never been to Boston when I served, and I just got a really big suitcase, and that was the only thing I had, and I was okay. The City Year uniform is meant to be a level playing field so that everybody has, equal access to the same like professional clothes, etc. But the benefit of that also means you don't really have to think about what you're wearing in the morning. 5 days out of 7, you have an outfit picked out. So you don't actually need as many clothes as you might think you do at the beginning. We just need black pants for the City Year uniform to answer the question in the chat. So you can look for those now if you want to. Just black professional pants, no leggings or anything, but.
What's the pod company name?
I think they're just pods.
Yeah, there are a lot of them. If you Google like shipping pods, you'll be able to find them. When I moved from San Antonio to Denver, I used U-Haul because I was doing things on short notice and was able to do it through U-Haul. Transparently, they're pretty expensive depending on where you're shipping them from and how much you have to ship. So that's something to take into consideration, though. Brenna, have you talked about transitional housing at all?
We haven't talked about transitional housing. Before you jump into it, I don't want to forget to, like, if you are just coming and bringing like clothes and not that much, it'll be on the website, but Habitat for Humanity Restore also offers affordably priced furniture, so that's not something you're bringing. But if you can talk about transitional housing, I would love that.
So as part of like the push to get people here and the way that City Year supports people getting here is that they do offer transitional housing support to core members who are traveling. I think it's over, do you remember the amount of distance travel?
If you're relocating over 50 miles, then you get a $500 relocation bonus. That is taxed, so it comes out to about $330 after tax, and
and you don't get it before moving either, so you would have to take into consideration that money will be coming with one of your first couple of paychecks. But that can help offset some of the costs after the fact, and reimburse you if in the event you do have to ship anything.
And Josh or Themer, Emily, can you take the uniform question in the chat too?
So the pants for the city year uniform, you have to provide for yourself. And like Brenna said, they can just be any kind of black slacks as long as they are suitable for going into a school. So no leggings or things like that. And then in terms of accessorizing, there are some accessories that are acceptable. I'd have to check the handbook to make sure what those are exactly. But the uniform when I and Brenna did city year is completely different. And so there is a lot more autonomy and ability to individualize through the use of accessories, including like colorful socks. We used to have to do only black or white. I think like headbands and earring rules have relaxed a little bit recently, so like there is the ability to accessorize and individualize even though you are in a uniform. I don't remember about the specifics regarding long
We
sleeves.
provide 3 different types, 4 different
Like
types of
warming.
jackets.
Yeah.
I don't think there'd be a problem with wearing a long sleeve shirt under that, but we
I
do
don't think so
provide
either.
like a sweatshirt type of material, a sweater, your bomber jacket, and a warm weather jacket as well. And then as far as accessories, like you can wear jewelry and everything like that, but from a safety perspective, like don't wear big hoops to a school. That would not be wise. So just think about what, how you'll be interacting with kids and safety.
Is there like an official dress code on our website or something? No?
We just got another question about the handbook. I can download a copy that Brenna can, or I can upload to the Slack group. So we'll get that out to you from this year if you want to review it in advance and learn a bit more about what you're getting into with regard to like uniform and certain regulations.
Yeah, they didn't put the handbook on the main website because they're reviewing, the Equity Council is reviewing it to make sure. But there's black pants and you need to wear black shoes as well. It's okay if they're not all black, but just general black shoes. And then we'll provide polos and button-ups and jackets and coats. And you have 10 days off. I'm like looking at the chat. So if you're not pulling that up, that's where I'm like looking right now. But you get 10 days off to use as sick or personal.
As long as the shoes are black or like mostly black, we'll count them fine. No open toes is the only thing, and that's a safety issue. And they get backpacks with the uniform. You get backpacks with the uniform, and they're pretty sturdy backpacks, I have to say. I still have mine, and I haul all my stuff in it, so.
Is the teacher to core member ratio 1-to-1 in the schools?
Mostly. Sometimes they have more than one partner teacher, just depending on like their bell schedule and things like that. So at least one, I would say no more than 3 partner teachers, but mostly 1-to-1.
In general, in the elementary school space, you're more likely to spend time in one classroom. It's when you get into the middle or high school space and your students are going from class to class that you might work with like a larger group of teachers sometimes.
So in terms of the strictness of the dress code and what kind of consequences are there for dress code mistakes, we've really adapted a more coaching mindset, especially when it comes to dress code. We don't want to penalize people if they are out of uniform. We understand that things happen. Sometimes you may spill stuff on yourself on the way out. I've done that plenty of times. And so your impact manager will work with you if there are corrections that need to be made. If it's like an ongoing, just non-compliance thing, certain pieces of the, for instance, certain pieces of the uniform, are required by AmeriCorps. So like you have to be wearing an AmeriCorps logo at all time. That's generally done through your name tag. And so like that's one that we really try to encourage. It also lets people know who you are. But in terms of like consequences, as long as it's not an ongoing and persistent issue, you're not going to be penalized for it. Your impact manager may have some conversations with you to check in about it if it becomes a more persistent issue though.
The purpose of the uniform is that because you're here for 1 year, but you're a part of, a larger organization and representing something more than just yourself. It's to symbolize to the communities and students that we work with who you are. And so if you're wearing, you're going to put on your bomber, and on the first day, kids will know who you are and run up to you and, oh my God, a city year. So it's meant to be a way to show consistency year to year, even though you will likely only be here 1 year, if that makes sense.
What do you know about the policy on the facial piercings?
That one I'm gonna have to look up again because I believe it's changed. In the past, like certain piercings, the septum has been one that if you have a septum piercing, AmeriCorps has previously required and City Year has previously required that you switch it out with something that's clear. But love, I'm gonna have to look it up and I can post that in the Slack to get you more specifics. So there's another question about most meetings being virtual. That's really determined based on what the school and what the district is doing. Generally speaking, if we are in person full time, all team meetings would also be in person. Since core members are back to an in-person schedule, they're getting into that cadence a little bit, but most of their meetings still have to be held virtually to accommodate like social distancing considerations and capacity limitations in rooms. So it will be determined based on DPS structure and policy next year, really. You can absolutely have long hair. We have core members with long hair across the spectrum, so that's definitely something that you can do. Enrichment clubs, so that is also kind of school specific depending on the need and the desire of the partner. We do have people who kind of design their own school enrichment clubs. We've had science clubs, crafting clubs, things like that. And so there is some autonomy and some license to throw a little bit of yourself into the after school space depending on what the school is looking for.
And I was just going to add on to the virtual thing. Our leadership and development training days happen on Fridays. And so you'll have a few more of those at the beginning of the year. Generally, if we are meeting in person, to Emily's point, we're not sure. But usually those would only be on Fridays, and the frequency decreases throughout the year as you get more and more training under your belt. You wouldn't have to come to the office like regularly if you were serving at Highline and wanted to live closer to your school. So hopefully that helps. And Emily, I was looking in the chat, so I might have missed it. When you were talking about clubs, did you cover how at some schools we make our own, but some schools we support other organizations?
That part I did not mention. And so there are some schools that have partnering organizations within them. For instance, at Johnson, we have Boys and Girls Club. So rather than doing our own separate things after school, we integrate. And so we at Johnson do more of a tutoring thing, and then sometimes they'll help out with Boys and Girls Clubs activities rather than kind of starting from the ground up and building. Where we can, we integrate and partner with other organizations that are on campus because we know that that promotes a stronger campus as a whole. So the question about a part-time job prevent us from receiving STEP benefits, it depends on how much income you are making and how many hours you're working. Typically, when we've had core members who are also working a part-time job and applying for SNAP benefits, their benefit allowance is decreased because they have that additional income that's coming in, whereas your stipend does not count as income when you are receiving those benefits. So
you should still be able to receive them. It might just be a smaller amount, but most people don't earn enough or work enough part-time hours that it's a like super significant amount. Morris, are you still on? I know he might have had to hop off, but I thought he would be a good person to speak to Maria's question. I'm going to say he's probably not here, but Morris's professional career is pretty extensive, and so he is involved in a lot of different LGBTQIA+ organizations. One in particular that we were working with prior to COVID shutting down is the Center, and they plan, they're in charge of Denver Pride overall. And so they were going to come support us with some different trainings, but there is a very fine line between what you can, what City Year as an organization can align with because of AmeriCorps regulations. So we encourage our core members and staff members to be as active as possible outside of service, but you can't align yourself with any type of political organizations while on AmeriCorps time. But we do have a really active anti-racist channel in our currently serving core, where core members post a lot of different opportunities to sign things outside of hours, different rallies or things to protest, events to go to and support, donate time, donate money. But City Year as an organization, AmeriCorps does not let us like endorse too many different things while on City Year time. But we value civic engagement, and things like voting are super important. Just can't like endorse specific candidates. But we do have quite a few different political representatives, figures involved. We've got a couple school board members that come to speak at L&D days sometimes. And then we've had representatives from the state level Congress come in because Morris worked for Diana DeGette. He's really familiar with like the governor and some other political figures. So they're a pretty active part of our community. I hope that answers it. And for Isabel's question, you can do anything outside of City Year time. You just can't do it while you're on City Year time. Like if you're in the classroom serving students, you should be signing a petition on City Year time, for example. But as soon as you're done with your day, you can use that time however you see fit. And there was another question in the Slido, when is registration? And that happens the week before our start date. So it'll be either, if we start on the 19th, then registration will be on the 12th, and the week of the 12th. If we start on July 26th, then registration will be the week of July 19th. If for whatever reason that's going to be a challenge, we can occasionally do one-off registrations for people. Say if you wanted to fly out in June for a day or two, we could try to work something out with you. That's a lot trickier during COVID. So you'd have to work with us on an individual level. But I do, if possible, encourage planning to be out here in time for the regular registration day, because it's when you get to meet everybody else. So it can be a better experience than doing it by yourself. And Isabel, if you want to post that, a link or anything in the Slack group about your organization, like that's a great place. And we have the anti-racist channel or the random channel. So definitely welcome things like that. Betsy, I'm not sure if I totally understand your question, but I would say a lot of people choose to save a lot of money beforehand in order to relocate. So I think a lot of people kind of spend the summer saving up some money, but I don't know if that totally covered it.
I'll jump in too to just reiterate a little bit. I think if you're driving out here planning on having a car, make sure you have a solid set of tires before you move out here if you can. That's pretty important. We occasionally will get snow in like May or June, and I would say when I moved out here, my tires were on the less side of prepared. Also, really, really, really want to reiterate, best thing that you should do before you move up here is make sure you have all of those documents lined up. Also
Yep.
have been there when I wasn't ready for my documents.
You are that person.
Yeah, and it takes a long time to get them replaced, especially if it's going through the mail or you have to order online. Just to share in my story, so you do not do what I did. Lost my wallet on day one of the job and could not get I-9'd. I had to drive back to Texas to get my ID replaced. Do not be me. Get your documents and secure them so you can get onboarded and you can get paid and start on time.
I have a question about documentation. Is a copy of your birth certificate okay, or does it have to be the real thing? Real thing?
Copies aren't acceptable for any of them. It must be the original document. Yeah.
Okay,
and
thank
social
you.
security cards, we have been able to accept when they're laminated sometimes, but all social security cards on them say do not laminate. So I wouldn't recommend doing that, and know that if it's not the like original document, we're unlikely to be able to accept it.
Thank you.
Yeah, good clarification. And for any kind of, passport and social. Yeah, the passport and the birth certificate are, are interchangeable. And then a passport can also be used as your ID, but you definitely need the social security card or the legal permanent resident card. And I think I shared the list for the documents in the Slack group, but I can share that again. That has like the full list. Those are just the most like easily accessible ones for most people, but there are a few other options.
Brenda, just in the sake of time, if folks have more questions that come up, where should they direct those to? Or what's the best way to get them answered?
Yeah, just reach out to me if you want to email it. That's awesome. Or we can set up time for a call, and that's totally okay too. But definitely use the Slack group, post things there as well. All the core members are excited to get to know everybody and answer questions. Thanks. I noticed when we went a few minutes over and then got sidetracked. So, but yeah, for the sake of time, we should probably wrap up. But thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.